So what's on agenda today? We are going to quickly take you through what is Bulwark and why Bulwark. Also, giving a complete overview on Arcon PIM solution and securing human and non-human access with Arcon, securing endpoint from targeted attacks, bridging security and operation efficiency with Arcon. And who we are. We are a value-added distributor of information security solution, having 20 plus years of experience in Middle East and now in India for past 3 years. And our Middle East organization was established in 1999 and 2017 in India. We work with 10 plus technologies vendors in India. We have around 700 business partners in India as well as in Middle East. So why Bulwark? Bulwark has established an excellent track recording in delivering a world-class product and excellent customer services. In customer services, we have high-end professional services, the solution architect, sales, marketing, implementation, and support through the teams of certified security professionals. Bulwark partners with best-of-breed technology vendors, offering award-winning products with excellent customer services. We deliver round-the-clock value-added services through our partner network across Middle East and India subcontinent region. We work as an extended arm of security vendors whom we represent in the region, promoting and selling the IT security products and solutions through our reseller channel partners. We also have a dedicated sales, marketing, and certified technical team. And a support part, we also offered a consultancy through the proof of concept, that is POC, and round-the-clock technical support, focus on training to develop the right technology skills and the knowledge. Bulwark represents around 10 vendors in India for the solution, and Arcon, a leading information technology company specialized in risk control solution. Bulwark is a distributor of Arcon in India as well as in the Middle East for privilege identity and access management, which is also known as PAM Solutions. And we have other solutions like behavior analysis, inside threat monitoring, antivirus, endpoint threat detection, cloud email security, email archiving solution, patch management, reception technology, multi-factor authentication, mobile device management, monitoring solution, security, remote access management. So please note all the attendees will be muted during the presentation. Please raise your queries to the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. And I would also make a highlight. So when you write your questions, you have to click on the all panelists. So all the panelists will be able to see your questions. We will try to answer all the questions during or towards the end of the session. If you miss anything or any queries after the session, not to be worried. You're always welcome to reach Bulwark at any time. And we are there to help you out in case if you want to have a product demo, POC, or get the pricing for your customers. If you require, we also would like to send the recorded version of this webinar coming days. With this, let me also welcome Mr. Yahya Khan, the head of pre-sales from Arcon, to take you through the product and answer your questions.
Thank you, Pratibha, for that wonderful introduction. Appreciate that. And good afternoon to everybody on the session today. I hope you're all keeping safe in these unusually trying times. Just to check, my audio is clear, right, Pratibha? You're able to hear me loud and clear. Perfect.
Yes, it's clear. It's clear, Khan.
So I'm representing Arcon on today's discussion. Arcon, as Pratibha pointed out, is a leading cybersecurity solutions provider with a flagship PAM solution. We have been in this space for more than 10 years now. So as per today's agenda, to combat the challenges of safeguarding against unmonitored access through PAM, we'll be looking at a couple of important things that we have listed down in today's agenda. Access to your privileged assets, your crown access. We'll be looking at how do you privileged assets, your crown jewels of the data center. we would security beyond your data centers to your user endpoints, which could be anywhere. It could be within the organization's network, especially during the COVID times. Now that we've got people working from home, you may have people coming in remotely. So how do we secure the endpoints for an organization for a better security posture? And then finally, generally, you have this problem statement that security and operational efficiency don't generally go hand in hand. So how are we trying to make sure that we bridge this gap? We don't have users complain about not being able to do things that they're supposed to do or they have been doing. So this is the agenda of today's discussion. So starting off with securing human access. So the very first step towards ensuring that you've got secure operations being carried out inside a data center, the very first thing that we are trying to achieve is secure the keys to open the doors, to your crown jewels. So by implementing a PAM solution, the very first thing that any organization would achieve is to take away the credentials from the user and secure them inside a vault, inside a safe, and put controls around it so you know exactly who's accessing what. Now, with that being said, a question comes up that if my administrators, if my users, my human users, if they do not have access to the keys to open the doors, how would they be able to perform their administrative tasks? Maintaining the balance between operational efficiency and security. So how do I ensure then go and connect? Arcon gives you a seam is that while I'm taking away the credentials from the users, I'm giving them a platform, I'm giving them a mean through which they'd be able to access all their devices using whatever be the preferred method. So by implementing the PAM solution, we're not saying that we're going to take away the available methods or the preferred methods of access from the users or the administrators. So if you are an admin who prefers to use a third-party tool for accessing his or her device, we will make sure that we're able to make the connection happen. We're able to facilitate these single sign-ons using the same exact tool, so the users don't have to experience a change in their in their experience. The solution is available for all the type of devices that you would want to access through PAM. We're not limiting ourselves to a specific breed of devices. If you look at any enterprise data center, you would have anything and everything, right from your operating systems, your databases, to your network devices, to your security devices. Of course, there are PAM solutions out there who would, at a high level, cover all of these device types. With Arcon, we have now taken it mainstream. We've now taken it beyond just the infra devices. You've got an Oracle ERP, or you've got a SAP running in your organization, and you've got privileged identities there, which are the main keys. These privileged identities for you and can also facilitate single sign-ons. So be it an operating system, be it a database, be it a network device, be it a security device, whatever be the device, over the period of time, as I said, we've been doing this since last more than 10 years. We have built these connectors. So this connector is a terminology that we use to talk about the integration between our PAM platform and the target devices that we integrate with. So with these connectors, you have these features, this functionality available out of the box, where you could integrate with all of these device types. Now, that being said, no PAM solution can claim that they would have connectors for every technology that exists in any data center out there. Of course, even while deploying our solution with new implementations, we identify that there are certain technologies that we may not have integrated with. And this usually becomes a sort of a bottleneck. So what we have done is we have now created a connector framework, which allows you to build your own connectors without getting the OEM involved. So we want to enable, again, when we talk about operational efficiency, we want to reduce OEM to get a new. We are allowing them, and once you are comfortable saying that this is exactly how it's supposed to, give us a script file, we include it in our source code, we generate a patch, we give it back to you, and you're good to start. Of course, so as I said, we will session, every security brings some amount of overhead, but we are always cautious that we don't break the efficiency in the operations inside a data center. So security, we are making sure that once you trust our solution with your privileged credentials, when we have to facilitate these single sign-ons for you, the credentials are always in control of the PAM solution, regardless of whether the connection is initiated from the end user's machine, or if you have something so similar to a Citrix worker server where the user just gets to see a rendered session. So there are PAM solutions out there who would talk about deploying jump servers, terminal servers, so that the sessions don't reach the end user's machine, or the credentials don't reach the end user's machine. Arcon has made sure to give a better user experience, even if the credentials have to travel as far as the end user's machine, they're always within the security wrapper of the Arcon solution. And then we talk about the target applications that we can integrate with. We can believe in building these generic connectors so that with every new device type, which follows the same protocol, you don't have to get a new connector built. So if you've got technologies, if you've got devices running on SSH, I've got a generic connector there with which you can connect to any SSH device. If you've got your web applications that you would want to integrate with, some interesting case studies there would be, we've got customers in the Middle East who had a requirement of securing their social networking sites because they had a team of marketing guys, all expat, connecting to the clients, Facebook, LinkedIn, making sure that the right content. The client always has this concern about what if these credentials are misused and I've got some nonsense that shows up on my social networking site that the organization. How do I ensure that while my marketing guys are able to access the Facebooks and the LinkedIns and the Twitters of the world, at the same time, I still am in control over what can they do and from where can they access. So that's how Arcon facilitates single sign-on into now, how do we do it? We need to, as I said, security is an important aspect to it. We want to make sure that if I'm going to make these connections happen from the user's workstation, the credentials are always under the wrapper of Arcon PAM, a custom wrapper that we create. These can be injected via command line. So if you've got a CLI-based access, you've got certain devices who would give you an SSH or a telnet interface. Arcon can facilitate these single sign-ons by seamlessly injecting credentials over command line. If you've got a web application or if you've got a third-party device which gives you a thick client for a rich interface, Arcon can even securely inject the credentials into these user interfaces. We also have come out with keystroke automation and robotic process automation. As you see, the entire world is trying to now introduce newer security approaches to reduce the amount of misuse that happens. The classic example could be an Amazon console, which would make you first enter a user ID on screen. It's unlike any traditional web page where you have a screen, you enter the user ID and password on the same screen, and then you hit the login button. It will make you first enter a username or an email address on screen one, then you hit next. And with the AI or the intelligence of the application of the web console, if it feels anything unusual is happening, maybe your source IP is unusual, or the browser, the information that they're able to get is unusual, after asking you to enter the email address, they would randomly throw a CAPTCHA in. So the user has to then enter a CAPTCHA and then move on to the screen where you have to enter the password. So for cases like this, Arcon uses automation bots to automate the single sign-on process for the user. So effectively what we're trying to do for you is we're trying to reduce the entire log-on process, the sign-on process, to any target device that we integrate with. We want to bring it down for you just to a mouse click. So every device through PAM is going to be available for you in a mouse click. And then if you have specific needs of a specific device, and if you want to give you multiple options there, maybe I'll give you a list of a couple of options that you could choose to connect from and a couple of additional mouse clicks there. Bottom line being that we're making sure that if I'm introducing a new layer of PAM, if your administrators currently access their devices directly, and if I'm introducing a new layer of PAM in between the users and the end devices, I try and reduce the number of clicks or the number of hops that a user has. away the credentials from the user, ensure can access their devices with just a this is this makes it an ideal solution for the administrator, for the end user. However, a PAM solution is supposed to look at both the parties on the opposite side of the table. We're looking at the administrators, and we're also looking at the organizations who want to ensure there are security measures, there are strict security measures so that there are no breaches. So what do we bring in for the organizations? Now, organizations get these controls, these access control policies, through which you could specifically point out or specifically spell out the activities that an administrator, an authorized perform on the end devices. That third-party administrator come in for an implementation. I could be a third-party auditor who just needs access to look at the logs. You don't have to give me all the privileges. These are some of the common use cases. Even within the organization, when you've got administrators, generally we have seen these practices being followed by organizations where if I'm a SQL administrator and my SQL database runs on a Windows machine, I would most likely be RDPing into the remote server and launching the management studio, connecting to that database locally. What we want to ensure is that the unnecessary access of assets, you don't want a database administrator to have RDP access to the server which hosts the database. You don't want a database administrator to have SSH access to the Linux server where the Oracle database runs. So we want to make sure that users can, or the administrators can access only the assets they're responsible for. I don't want an application administrator to have platform level privileges. I don't want a platform administrator to be able to go and fiddle around with the application, modify file, modify configurations here and there. So with these access control policies that Arcon bundles with its solution, you could actually implement them at two levels. You could define the who's and the what's and the where. You could say who gets access to which device at what time from where. If I'm coming from a different source, I could limit the entitlements that the user would be allowed to connect or would be able to see. That's where the granularity activities that an administrator can perform or cannot perform on an end device. So if I'm a database guy, should I be allowed to execute a select command? Should I be allowed to execute a delete command? These are all the controls. So you could restrict the users. You could even implement least privilege by allowing users to access these end devices, these target servers with least privilege, and whatever administrative activities that they have to perform, they can then elevate their privileges to perform only those set of activities. So it's either I give you all the access and restrict you from performing certain critical activities, or I give you basic privileges and allow you to elevate to perform any administrative activities. We give you the flexibility of implementing either of the approaches, whichever fits your requirement best. With all of this being done, the icing on the cake is the ability of the solution to record every active. So any security solution has to be a combination of preventive measures and detective measures. Whatever that we've spoken of so far, the approach to take away these privileged credentials from the administrators, giving them a platform through which they can access all the devices with a mouse click, and allowing the organizations to implement access control policies, these are all preventive measures. We want to make sure that nothing goes wrong. But unfortunately, that's not how the administrative world works. You cannot look at every activity from a binary perspective, that it cannot be allowed or can be allowed. There would always be certain things which you may not want an administrator to be able to perform usually, but if the time comes, you don't want the administrator to wait around for approvals to come through. That's where the session monitoring, the ability of the solution to monitor the activities and giving you enough forensic data so that you could go back and identify exactly what went wrong. We're not saying that the administrators would have a malicious intent in performing an activity, but generally because administrators are generally so buried under their work, you'd have multiple windows open. You're not sure whether the query which you're executing on this window is the right window or not. If anything were to go wrong, though these end devices give you logs, they would give you system level logs. These logs are not available in easily consumable format. You still have to sit through all the logs, figure out, and it'll take you hours to conclude this is what went wrong. With the PAM solution's ability to monitor and to log all these activities, you've got logs available in text format and video format to see exactly what was being done and what was the error that was made by the administrator. The idea is to help us identify our mistakes faster. The sooner we are able to identify our mistakes, the sooner we'll be able to resolve them. Then the question comes at how efficient, again, talking about the operational efficiency in this measure that we are offering you. Uh, any solution can pick up the session logs, give you hours of video logs, but then how efficient are these logs in terms of reviewing them, in terms of identifying the critical activities performed in them? So with Arcon's ability to give you smart session logs, we actually give you a video timeline. So if an administrator was connected to an asset for 2 hours, you don't have to sit through the entire 2 hours of video log. The video timeline would give you color-coded events, depending upon what profiles or policies have you configured, how do you identify certain activities, what for you is going to be a critical activity, what for you is going to be not so critical activity, and what for you is going to be a normal activity. We could color code these events inside a video so that you don't even have to search for any particular thing. You could just look at the timeline and you see 3 reds. You want to see what was being done during those reds. You click on that, the video starts playing from that point onwards, and you can see exactly what the administrator did. So making the logs, the review of the logs easy is Arcon's way of bringing operational efficiency into your security operations. So that's about. And then finally, another thing is about, so security dictates that you have to constantly go back and look at the accesses that your users, your administrators have on the assets. A lot of times you'd see somebody requires a temporary access to an asset, somebody approved it, there was no revoking that happened at the end of the activity. So Arcon also gives you a module through which you could run user certification, user recertification, or you call it the user access review. You could schedule it. I could get the hierarchy of the organization from your user directories to see who's the ideal candidate to run a review for a given administrator or for a user. And you could periodically go in and figure out which user has access to which device to using which privilege and whether that privilege is really required. So with this, you're making sure you're constantly going back and making sure that when I spoke about the level 1 access and who should have access to which device at what time, this gives you a clear picture of what are the accesses that your administrators have to which assets in your organization and whether it's really required. I run a review for a user and I see this guy has access to one of the most critical databases and the privilege assigned to him is L3. I could quickly go back and look at the access logs to see how many times did this user even access this asset. If there have been no access, maybe this user doesn't need that. Or maybe if this user has had access this asset in the last month or in the quarter, what were the kind of activities being performed? So maybe looking at the activities log, you'd be able to tighten the screws and get the right sort of policies to ensure that the user has access to only activities to be performed that they generally perform on the given asset. Now, all of this is when I'm making the user access their devices through PAM. While we're making sure we keep it simple, we keep it straightforward for the administrators, you may have some user who would try and bypass PAM to access their devices directly because going through PAM seems like an overhead to them. So Arcon PAM also gives you an option where you could configure policies through which you'd be able to detect outside of accesses to the end devices which have been made directly and not through PAM. This can be done by integrating my PAM solution with your existing SIEM tool if you have one, where the device sends logs to the SIEM tool, PAM sends logs to the SIEM tool. The correlation happens and you come to know that PAM did not provide the single sign-on to an asset, and there's a device which says somebody logged on at this point. Maybe this access happened from outside of PAM. That's when I'm relying on an SIEM tool. Internally, PAM has the intelligence. We have built a guard application through which we can identify all the outside of PAM access. And we have kept it as a configurable action for you, whether you want to restrict that direct access or whether you want to notify somebody that somebody just tried to log into a device. Maybe you want to quickly take a look, figure out why it was the direct access being made. So we've kept it configurable for you. If you want to have a more strict policy, you could just simply say that no direct access allowed from outside of PAM. Or you could, for a more flexible approach, you could say that anytime somebody accesses the device directly, I would want to be notified, and I'll look at each event as per the scenario that I have. So that's about securing human access and making sure that all your human access are monitored and you have enough controls, and you're making sure that users are able to access their devices, their target servers, and be able to perform their activities without any hiccups. Now, with more and more organizations moving towards automation, you would see that you would have applications and you would have DevOps, you would have bots which will connect to devices, perform scheduled tasks, automated tasks. You've got containerization of applications where a new container spins off every time the load on the application passes a certain throughput. And now this new container requires a new set of credentials. So how do I ensure users? I'm saying that the users would have to first come to PAM and then they can access any device with a mouse click. What about the automation? So Arcon PAM has built these integrations so which we could integrate with a variety of automation tools, and we could provide access to the privileged credentials managed by PAM. We call it just-in-time access. Whoever requires access to a privileged credential could either make a request by specifying what credential do they need, and for how long would that credential be required, and PAM can release a password. One of the classical example in this case would be an integration with a VA tool, the likes of Rapid7 and the Nessus and the policies. So these tools would connect to each of your network devices, let's say, and perform a VA scan every 15 days, every 30 days. Generally, organization, to make sure that these VA tools can run properly, would create a common user ID and password across all the devices, which is generally a strict no in terms of security policies. Because all I have to do is break this one user ID password, and now I have access to all your networking devices. So generally, you'd follow this approach. You would hardcode or you would feed this credential into the VA tool. Now the VA tool connects to any device, any network device, and runs a scan. We are trying to eliminate these credentials. We're trying to eliminate the dependencies where you have to feed the credentials into an application. We say anytime this application requires access to any asset, you make a quick call, resets those passwords, PAM delivers those passwords, or the application can pull the password from the vault, perform its job, and then the moment the job's done, the application notifies PAM, and PAM automatically rotates the password. So even if that application would have made copies of that password or would have saved that password somewhere, that password would no longer be valid. The same logic applies to all your automation tools. You've got a job running midnight every night, and it has to get the user ID and password. Instead of giving it a password, a static user ID and password, you make the application, make a simple call, get the credentials delivered to it, and just in time for it to be able to perform the job. Once the job's done, PAM rotates the password. So that's how the advanced integration with automation tools and applications would work. Then we talk about the applications running in the organization, which would have certain service accounts. And not every application has the intelligence to be able to make an API call. Maybe some applications hardcode these credentials into config files and INI files. Now, if I want to automate the rotation of these passwords, how do I manage these dependencies? With Arcon, you have an ability to even manage hard-coded passwords. We do this as part of our professional services engagement. The very first thing that we would try and figure out is there a way to completely those passwords, completely remove those passwords from those config files, from those INI files. If it's a legacy application where you can't really make a call, we would let those passwords be there. We'll just figure out if there's a way we could encrypt these passwords so that they don't sit there in those config files in plain text, waiting for somebody to open that file and get the password out. So we recommend our customers, our clients, to, if they have to hard code passwords, at least encrypt them. You could use an MD algorithm or hashing algorithm to encrypt those passwords, so that if by mistakenly opens up that file, they would at least not be able to see what the actual password is. And once these passwords have been encrypted, Arcon can periodically rotate the passwords on source. And as a dependency, Arcon can propagate these passwords into all these dependencies. This dependency, as I said, could be an INI file, could be a config file. It could even be, for instance, on a Windows platform, you generally see that you use Windows service accounts, the AD service accounts to run your Windows services. You could even propagate these passwords into Windows services to change the logon of that service. If you want to have a restart done post that, you could let Arcon know. Arcon can also do a quick restart to make to let the password take effect. Then we've got the more complex dependencies where maybe that password is sitting inside a config file or an INI file. This password is sitting deep inside the application's configuration. There's no way to push that password into the application from outside without using an API. So if the application has an API, which I can call and pass the new string of password, and the application can apply this new password to itself, that can also be done. If there's a way I could create a bot, like for instance, this particular dependency requires me to log into a third-party application, navigate to a particular screen, push the password there. Arcon can build a bot which will imitate the steps that a human ideally performs to go and push the password there, and it will periodically do so. We can also create local agents which will cache the credentials so that when the application has to pull the password, it doesn't have to always make a call. You've got a local agent sitting on the server itself, caching the passwords. Again, we ensure the security of the cached password, and the password can be picked up directly from the agent sitting on the server. So this is how Arcon ensures that the passwords required for non-human entities inside the organization, inside the data center, are periodically rotated. So you look at any security consultant, ask the question, what's the best way to secure a password? The two obvious responses that you'd get is A, come up with more complex passwords, and B, keep on rotating your passwords periodically. The complex password makes sure that you're not able to brute force and get the password out. Rotating it periodically just means that you're putting the infiltrator back to ground zero with every password reset that you do. And then we have these approaches through which we could automate using our APIs. Arcon gives you a comprehensive API framework through which you could push passwords into third-party applications. You could control. When you talk about non-human entities, we don't want a rogue developer make an API call and get all the passwords out. So we could fingerprint. We could identify exactly what applications, what source IPs, what users are authorized to make these calls, and what credentials are allowed to be requested. We will not open up our entire vault to any application, to any user, to any API call, and allow them to get every password out of the vault, because that's a responsibility that we get. If we want to have a workflow for our users for the exceptional cases, we also have an option there, but then that becomes part of my securing privileged access for human users. So we have covered how do we want to secure the access for human users? How do we want to secure the access for non-human entities inside an organization? And all of this is considering that you've got servers, you've got privileged assets, limited privileged assets, which hold information which is crucial for the organization, which is critical for the organization. So we want to make sure that we've got control over who's allowed to access that information and who's allowed to modify that information. Organization's complete structure, you would always have more number of users as compared to the number of servers you have, or maybe it could be the other way around as well, but then generally you would see that there would be more number of endpoints. The endpoints make a larger number and would generally have a larger risk vector associated with them as compared to the servers. The servers sit deeper into your networks. The workstations are the one which have access to the internet. The workstations are the ones which have access to your email. The usual culprits when you are attacked by by an infiltrator. So how do we ensure these endpoints using the PAM solution? So Arcon's endpoint privilege management module, which is bundled along with the PAM solution, it helps you monitor, restrict, and elevate users on the endpoint. So what it's basically saying is, A, I take away the administrative rights from the users. No user should be logging on to a machine, to an endpoint, with an administrative account. We all must have heard about the hash attacks and the golden ticket attacks. The idea is, the moment you log on to a machine with a privileged ID, the way Windows operating system works, it creates a hash of their account. Till the time you don't change the password of your account, the next time that hash sits on your machine. And if I'm able to get that hash and break it, now I have the password which has privileges. I have the password of an account which has privileges. I can now not only move laterally in the network, I might even be able to go deeper into your network. So the way for first step for implementing the PAM solution is to take away the privileged passwords from the users. Similarly, when I have to implement my endpoint privilege management solution, the very first thing is to identify the users with administrative rights and take away those administrative rights, either through implementing restrictions, or you implement least privilege and allow them to elevate themselves to be able to perform administrative tasks. This also includes management of the local inbuilt administrative accounts. Every Windows endpoint comes with an inbuilt administrative account. We've seen organizations either disable it or manage it through a Microsoft's native solution. Or the worst case could be that you've got these administrative accounts, the local inbuilt administrative accounts on your endpoints, all sitting on the user's machine with the same password, because it could be possible that the system administrator has to remote into this workstation and perform some administrative task. So, and passwords for every workstation in the organization. So the organization would generally put a common password for all the local inbuilt administrative accounts, and that password sits with the administrator. So these passwords for the local administrative accounts can also be managed via PAM, and you could rotate them the way you could rotate your privileged identities on your servers on a periodic basis. You could do this on a periodic basis. You could do this on an on-demand basis. You see something unusual in the activities being performed in the data center, which gives you maybe a hint that maybe this machine is compromised, and you would want to quickly go and change the password. You don't have to wait for a scheduled password change run every 30 days. You could go in, and on a click of a button, you could run a password change and randomize that password. Again, so when I say that I would take away the privileges, the administrative rights from a user, how easy do I make it for the user, for the end user, to be able to elevate their privileges? How do I ensure operational efficiency? Users can elevate their privileges on the fly. We could have zero workflows there. If the user is working in unusual working hours, we could have workflows defined there where the approval is sent to one of the identified approvers, the approver approves it, and the user is allowed to perform that administrative task. Again, for every activity being performed by the user on the endpoint, you could create rules, you could create policies through which you're able to record certain specific applications running on the user's machine. You're not really concerned about what a user does when they open up a browser and navigate to a specific URL, but then this is one of my critical business applications that the user has installed on his or her machine. Every time the user accesses that application, I would want to see what are they doing. Are they pulling out some report in form of a CSV and uploading it somewhere? I would want to be aware. So you could create these rules for logging the activities in form of text logs, in form of video logs. Text logs would tell you every single activity that a user performs. The number of times they open up a browser and navigate to a specific URL, the number of times they open up a Word file and scribble something on it. All of this can be made available in form of text logs, and then we would deploy an AI module on top of it. Again, just logging everything, and with the logs, if you're not able to conclude a specific act, it doesn't really help. So with the AI module, we're able to take this data and identify the behavior of the user and identify any anomalies in the behavior and notify you about it. And again, because it's an endpoint, you don't want these endpoints to act individually. You could integrate, if they're integrated with your Active Directory, we could integrate with your Active Directory, and the policies could be managed at the group level instead of doing it at the individual user level. Specifically talking about elevation, the user can request for elevation. As I said, there could be a policy defined for this particular user. There could be multiple policies, as I said, depending upon the time of the day, depending upon the day of the week. You could have different policies take effect, and you could have different approvers being notified. In fact, for different set of applications, you could have different set of approvers, and they would be notified for approving a request for the user. From the administrative point of view, we have kept it simple for the administrators to identify all the activities being performed. We don't want to create an overhead for the administrators to approve and to create policies. So the reporting, the dashboards are all available in the solution for you to identify what is being done. And if the user, if it's a remote user and you want to allow that remote user to be able to perform some administrative tasks by themselves, like of installing a printer, and if you want to control the USB ports on a machine, all of that could be done through the tool. So that's the elevation part of it. Restriction, again, as the word says, you could restrict pretty much anything and everything that a user should or should not be allowed to do. You could restrict them from navigating to certain sites. You could restrict them from navigating to certain applications. You could stop applications from spawning new child windows. So these are some of the controls. Your restriction policies could be keyword based. You don't know what exactly is the user going to do, but then if they have something of this sort in the title bar or something of this sort in the application, block it. So that's the kind of flexibility that we offer in terms of restricting the user's machine. Remote assist. Now this particularly focuses on your system administrators. As I said, in the PAM solution, you've got something for everyone. You've got something for the administrators. You've got something for the users. You've got something for the system administrators. If I'm a user working from home and I've got some urgent need to have something installed on my machine, and as per the company's policy, elevation rights cannot be given to me, I would most likely have to request a system administrator to remote into my machine. Generally, we have seen organizations would rely on third-party tools like your team viewers or your web access to access a remote user's workstation. Now, the challenge there is that the user who remotes in gets the same session of the logged in user. And the logged in user does not have any privilege or doesn't have any rights to install, modify anything on the machine. So in that case, the system administrator has to come with a password, with a privileged password, to be able to perform these administrative tasks. With Arcon's endpoint privilege management's remote assist, users can request, users could raise a request for a system admin to remotely access their machine. When the remote administrator comes in, the system administrator comes in at the time of sharing my screen with that user, I have an option of whether I want to just share, I allow them to have view only access, or whether I want to give them full access where they'll be able to control the keyboard and mouse. And at any point, if the remote user, the one who is remotely logged into my machine, wants to perform any administrative task, because Arcon is already managing the password of the local administrative account, they would be able to remotely run application with elevated rights. Again, what applications should this remote user be allowed to elevate is something with which the administrator can define. You don't want this remote user to be able to go into registry editor. You could stop that. This user would not be allowed to elevate registry editor and go in. So the control is still with the administrator as to what kind of applications should be allowed to be elevated and what kind of activities can a remote administrator perform on the end user's machine. And this can happen over the internet as well. Specifically, so we've seen a lot of application for this particular feature in the current scenario where we've got almost all entire workforce working from home. Generally, when working from office, I would just have to walk up to my system administrator, hand the laptop over to him or her, and have them perform their administrative task. Now, while working remotely, I'm not connected to the office's network. Can my system administrator to my machine over the internet? Yes, they can using remote assist. So that's what the remote assist tool offers you. Now, as I said, right from the get-go, when we were speaking about securing access for human users, securing access for non-human entities in the organization, and securing your endpoints, we were introducing some layer of security, and security at times would be a hurdle or be a bottleneck for the users in their operational activities. We've spoken about how Arcon ensures that the operational efficiency of that user does not get affected. We are making sure that the users have to go through a minimal experience change, whatever are the preferred method of access target devices, whatever activities that they have to perform on the local machines, they're able to elevate their rights and perform those. Of course, with security, there would always be some overhead, but then we don't want this overhead to grow to such an extent that it starts becoming a hurdle for users to perform their activities. This is from the user's perspective. From the administrative side, we've spoken about so many features. We don't want to offer a PAM solution which becomes into a nightmare when it comes to administration. You would see PAM solutions out there which would tell you that once you deploy our solution and once you have to start maintaining it, administrating it, you have to have maybe 3 or 4 full-time employees just logging into PAM and doing all the administrative tasks. Arcon ensures that you're able to identify administrative users or power users from each user group, and they themselves can perform the administrative task, and you don't even actually have to have a full-time employee. So we look at the security that we offer from an operational point of view, and how can we embed security into it. So for administrators, you've got a single console. The solution is highly scalable. You want to add more assets, you want to add more users, you want to add more endpoints. You don't have to the solution can be easily scaled vertically or horizontally. You want to move, you are migrating your workload from the PAM solution to cloud. Arcon supports cloud deployments and can be deployed on cloud platforms using the native services, so you don't have to be worried about high availability to be configured at the application level. You've got cloud platforms that offer native high availability solutions that you could learn. And then you want to have some data, some logs, some reports, which will tell you exactly what is the amount of benefit that you're getting out of the PAM solution. So if you want to see that, do I know at any given point of time, what's the password age of any privileged ID that exists in my organization, you could just run a report and it will give you the password age of every single identity that PAM manages for you. So you've got these dashboards that you could refer to. You've got reports available out of the box. You've got canned reports. We've got custom reporting module where you could go and create your basis of your requirements. You could create you could have different representation of the data. You could use sunburst. You could have pie charts. You could have graphs. The idea being that whatever is being done through PAM in terms of administration, in terms of you should be able to look at that data and draw conclusions that how effective is the solution in terms of making users' life easy and the administrators' life easy. So that's it. If you guys have any questions now, be happy to take them up. Oh, what time? One-time access. Yes. So when the administrators have to map entitlements to users, so any access to any device in Arcon, we've got 3 modes. It could either be assigned access to a device on a permanent basis. It could be request basis. I'm saying that this is an important asset. I don't assign access to it to anybody on a permanent basis. You require access, you request for it. Now, while requesting access to an asset, it could either be one time, saying that I want to perform one activity, or you could say that because I have to perform an activity which is going to run for maybe a couple of days, so I would want to connect to this asset from Monday until Friday 9 to 5. So you could raise these requests, and PAM has the option where the approver will approve it. Can we this application? Your change management tools, we have a comprehensive API framework. So when you talk about integration of PAM with a change management tool, of course, these are 2 enterprise solutions. They would have certain integration touch points. What we have so far identified is when you want to grant access to a privileged access for a user, maybe you'd want the user to specify a valid ticket number, which comes out of your change management tool. So PAM solution can validate that ticket number against the change management tool, against an ITSM tool. Or if you do not want to configure your workflows, as I said, the requests would have to be approved by approvers. and you don't want to create these workflows at each application level, so you have them well defined into your ITS and change management solutions. So instead of raising these requests into PAM, you could raise these requests into your Jiras and the other ticketing tools. And the final step, where something has to be assigned or some access has to be granted, would be performed automatically because of the integration between these two steps.
Okay, thanks for all attending the webinar. Hope you have enjoyed the webinar. In case if your questions was not answered or missed out by any chance, not to be worried, we will get back to you another a day time or in a day too. So the recorded version and the presentation will be available in our YouTube channel. The details will be shared shortly in a mail. Thanks for attending once again. Stay connected. Thank you.